Let's go ahead and set up camera 3, which is going to be a little bit interesting. We're going to do a few different things here. So camera 3, if you remember, is the one that I stuck down here underneath some vegetation and in the water. So it's this guy down here, and if I select him, I can see the preview down here in the lower right. Now what I want to do is I want to play around with the depth of field of that camera. So let's first go ahead and add that camera to our Matinee. So with the camera selected, I'll go in Matinee, right click, I'll add a new camera group like before, call this camera 3. Okay, so it's got the movement and the FOV track pretty good. Now let me go ahead and got very little real estate space here on my desktop. What I'm going to do now is I want to play around with the depth of field settings. Now I can't do that by default because I don't have a track set up for that. But the first thing I want to do is I want to set up the depth of field the way I want it to look, and then we'll worry about the animation portion. That part will be pretty easy. Okay, so the way that we can do this is let's select camera 3 and look at the details panel over here. I'm going to lock this down so that this details panel doesn't go anywhere. So if I go over here, there's a little lock icon. I'm going to turn that on, and in the camera properties here, I'm going to scroll down, and you're going to see bloom and ambient occlusion, all kinds of stuff. Go down to the area that says depth of field, and that's the stuff that we're going to play around with. And by default, all this stuff is turned off, which means that everything is set to default, which we don't want. We want to override this. So there's a few parameters here that I want to control and override, including the method, the focal distance, and the focal region. You can see immediately when I turn those things on, my outcome changes in the little camera preview. So before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, with the camera selected, I'm going to go to lock viewport to actor, and you're going to notice something here. Okay, if I go here and I start trying to make changes to this stuff, you're not going to see any of the changes update in the viewport. Now you're probably wondering, well, I need to be able to see the changes in the viewport or else I can't edit any of this stuff, so what's going on? Well, right now we're not actually looking through the camera itself. We're just looking through the viewport from the point of view of the camera, if that makes any sense. So we're still using the viewport from the regular Unreal Editor viewport. All we're doing is placing the viewport at the same position and oriented in the same direction as the camera. But we're not looking through the camera's point of view in the sense that we're actually, looking through the camera lens, so to speak. So a better way of doing this, let me unlock the viewport from that camera. When you're in a situation like this, there's another solution. I'm going to bring back my Matinee over here real quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something here real quick. Down here's our camera 3. Well, you notice that the cameras have these little camera icons that are gray. Click on the camera 3's camera icon right here. It's going to turn yellow, and at the same time it's going to switch us back to the viewport or the viewpoint of the camera. So right now we're actually looking, our viewport is set to the camera, but we're actually using the camera to see in the world. We're not just using the regular viewport, we're using the camera. So now we can actually see stuff. So now if I edit this stuff, you'll notice that now I can actually see the results in the Unreal viewport, which is exactly what I want. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's edit this depth of field. So what I want here is basically, I want to focus on these leaves that are close to the camera at the beginning of the shot, and then at some point in the shot I want to kind of blur that stuff out and focus in on something that's far away. Okay, and that's what I want to do. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and let's edit our depth of field settings here. First thing I'm probably going to want to do is turn on real-time. I'm going to switch to game view, real-time's on and all that stuff. I want to be able to see what I'm doing. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start to edit these depth of field settings. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from the bokeh to Gaussian. It's just a little bit quicker and easier to control, and it renders out a little bit faster. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the focal settings and the focal region. So the focal region is set to 0 right now, which is not going to do us much good. I'm going to set it to maybe about 100 just to start off with. And for the focal distance, at the beginning of the animation, I want my focal distance to be really close to the camera. So something like 1, maybe like 5 or something like that will work out pretty good. And I want to blur out the stuff that's in the background. You can see that it's already pretty blurry up here at the top of the cave in the background. And well, these leaves are pretty low res. If you were doing something like this for a cinematic, you'd want to create some really high res, really nice, probably Z-brushed leaves to put close to the camera. But right now, for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to use these leaves. I'm not going to go and create some super high res ones. We'll assume with our imagination that they're super high res and crisp and using 4K textures or something like that. Okay, so focal distance is now set to 5, and what I want to do is right now set the focal region. So it's pretty cool. I have this kind of blurred out right here, which looks cool. So let me set the focal region to 75. That's really going to blur it out pretty good. And this will be the beginning of the animation. At the end of the animation, I want to make the focal distance, let's try 100. Maybe that might not be far enough. Let's try 500. Might be a little bit too far. Let's try about 350. It's looking okay. And let's take that focal region and let's increase that to maybe like 150. Or actually, let's just bump it up to 500. Okay, that's cool. Now you can see that this rock right here is nice and sharp. We're also getting some sharpness here from this guy. And that looks pretty cool. Let's try sending that to about 200. Now we can see that the actual hands that are holding the sphere are becoming pretty sharp, which is pretty cool. That's kind of what I want to do. But let's go to maybe like 250 for the focal distance. I think 250 will work out well. Now let me take that focal region and set that up to maybe about 600. Let's try 800. That's pretty cool because that really gives you a nice sharp look there to those rocks. So I'm going to go with that. I did not write down my settings. So I'm going to have to go back and kind of remember this stuff. So the focal distance and the focal region are the two parameters that I probably want to go ahead and animate and play around with, right? Cool. So to set that up is actually pretty easy. This video has gone on for almost 10 minutes now. So let me do this. Let me just end this video here, and in the next one we're going to jump in and get this set up.